Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Altcoin Buzz Trading. My name is Randy. Today, we're talking about Bitcoin. Imagine that. We're going to talk about Bitcoin today. We're also going to talk about tips because the market is just chippy choppy right now. And I don't feel like getting anyone into some weird positions with some weird trades. So we're going to do education again today. As we did last week as the market flip-flopped, as it's flip-flopping today. We'll see if it flip-flops over the next coming hours and days, and then maybe we'll get to some trades. There's a couple potentials on the table, but I don't think there's anything worth taking a bunch of risk on. So education it is. If you don't like it, let me know in the comments down below, and let me know what else you'd like to see. But tips it is today. Okay, so BTC, we were getting a little bit stable last week. We tried to go up. We failed at the 28.1. And then we were stable over the weekend and dropped down on the overnight session. Our volume isn't excessive, so we can still pull it back up. But what you're noticing right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the definition of the term chop. Chop implies it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. And that's basically what's been happening here for the past week. It's just absolute chop. Let's go to the 2-hour time frame, and we will take a closer look at said chop. So here's our kind of cup and handle breakout at our trend line decline. If you remember that from, I think, 2 weeks ago, that broke up, okay, like it should, right? You get a nice little pattern like this. And the good thing about this too is if you notice this declining trend line, the reason this is important, and I'm going to show you trend lines today. We'll start showing you trend lines. The reason this decline is important in my eyes. Now let's keep in mind a lot of people value different things. I'm not going to say this is the only way to look at a chart. This is the way I look at a chart. So if you're looking at a chart, you can take my way, this guy's way, that girl's way, another way, and put them all together and come up with your own way and something that you deem valuable. So for me, a trend line like this basically just shows a sloping resistance line. Gives me a time narrative, gives me a level narrative, and you see here we're pretty close to the trend line with no gap in the recent past. Not getting close to it in the recent past. Then we go down, and then we come back up to the trend line. Well, if this angle of attack has been sustained for so long, and now we're getting close to it, that generally means that some type of reversal is in order. And at the same time, we're playing with these prior highs. So now we're coming back into a point of resistance. We go sideways, which we did, and then we break it. Okay, that is kind of definition of a breakout. If you remember our last video on Friday, we talked about that same type of a thing, a low and then coming up, blah, blah, blah. So go back and watch Friday's video if you didn't see that. But we broke up, good breakout, volume was good. Nice little consolidation. Now we did move up. That's not ideal. Ideally, you'd like to say flat like this. That's better. And then now, and then we dropped. So we're talking about the chop. So we go up, then we drop. Great. Well, we get supported at our trend line. That's a good thing. Is it the greatest thing? No, but it stops you from really getting damaged. And now we undercut a little bit, not the end of the world. If you notice, we went sideways, then undercut just a little bit. Volume wasn't big. We bounced back, not a big deal. And then we start to go up a little bit. Don't really make a run for it, but we try to go up some. We get stalled out immediately, straight back down, almost to the lows. Try to come back up again, straight back down. You're seeing this continued distribution on the chart, and that's what's holding us down. Okay, they let it go over here probably just because they saw the same thing we saw, so they let it go up so they could take profits at a higher level. And now we're back down again, so they're going to try to let it go back up again to drop us back down. That is the definition of chop. It's pretty hard to contend with if you're not used to it. I don't like chop. I'm not a chop fan personally. I like breakouts, and I'm willing to be patient in this whole sequence. I've basically done nothing because there's not much really to do. I thought about doing this, but I just let it go, and now here we are, just sideways. So I don't think there's a lot to do. I do think we'll get supported again and come back up, and I'm hoping, just as we talked about trend lines a moment ago, back to the daily time frame, I'm hoping we can hold this trend line for a while longer, work its way up, and then we can start to come back down again. And hopefully by the end of the year-ish time frame, December 17th, anybody? Go look at December 17th almost every year in crypto for what I'm talking about if you're unaware. And then maybe we'll finally start a trend again around December 17th. So we'll see. But right now, I think it's just chops fill. Okay, so let's get to how to draw some trend lines. If you're new to trend lines, great. Very good. There's a couple things you're going to hear about trend lines. They don't work. They suck. Horizontals are the best. That is true. What else? You need 3 touches for a trend line. I disagree with that. So let's get right to it. Let's start with the good thing. A horizontal trend line is the best trend line. I do agree with that. What a horizontal trend line shows you, let's go back to some of our old school charts here. Notice we have all these boxes. Well, these boxes here are made up of a lot of horizontal trend lines, aren't they? You have 2 of them. You have a resistance and a support. Resistance, support, support, resistance, okay? So let's look at this 4,200 level. These horizontal trend lines, when set up properly, do work extraordinarily well. And one of the points about drawing trend lines is actually understanding what's happening on the chart and drawing the trend line to the appropriate chart situation, okay? So we'll touch on that first, and we'll just draw some trend lines. So what's happening here at this low here? Well, if we get that pop out of the mix, what you're noticing is a steep dive, an immediate bounce, a pretty extensive bounce, and volume was pretty substantial here. We have 3 what are called pocket pivots, which means they're volume days that are higher than recent history, okay? And so you get some beautiful pocket pivots that puts you in a range. So let's go ahead and drop this just to the top. So right off of the bat, if you have a very pointed high, you can draw a horizontal just off of a single candle, okay? Most trendline people aren't going to tell you that. I'm going to say that's a crock of garbage. The reason is because it's just a point of resistance, and you need to be noted of very finite points of resistance. Same to the downside, right? Which on this box, there we go. Which on this box, let's go all the way down to the tippy bottom. Once you're up, once you bounce off of this, that is a important level of support. So, and then what happens? Well, we chop in between those levels, okay? But we have this clear horizontal here at about the 4,200 line, give or take. All right, we have this high that doesn't quite get to it, this low that doesn't quite get down. But these are clear horizontals. Now, the reason they're clear is with time. So, right here, can you draw it? Yes, you can draw it, but it's less meaningful the less time that high has been respected. So as we go on, now this becomes more meaningful because you do have a small test of it here. We didn't get really close to it, but it was tested, okay? So from that perspective, this is now a good resistance level. As we move on, more time happens. Now we're coming back up to it. Now we're looking at this prior high, and you have to respect it because it's shown that it is a formidable opponent. Okay, if this were chopped through, kind of like what we've seen recently at the highs, you don't know what to expect. And that's why we don't know what to expect in this market. But as we go on, it gets respected again. And then you go on to some wedging tight action. So let's talk about some diagonal trend lines here. If you're looking at this chart right here, it should be fairly clear to you that you have a clear top horizontal. It should be clear. And if you look at my orange box, there's much more area on the right side of my chart here that is underneath recent price action. So this whole bubble of nothing is a big clue. Okay, so on this side, this nothing bubble is a clue, but at the same time, it's kind of balanced out by the opposite bubble. So that's a little bit less important. But if you look here, if you try to draw the bubble here, it's about a third the size. And so you can see that there's some pressure building to the upside. Okay, and so I think that is something to pay attention to. Now, you can see here there's a clear diagonal trend line forming, right? So we came down, we come up, and what we're going to do is right when we start going up, you're going to pop the trend line. Now, all I did is I clicked the trend line tool here. It's actually over here, but I touched it once, and now I'm not holding my mouse button, and I can do crazy things with my trend line, so have fun. But what you want to do is essentially go to your, let's just say we're on this day, you want to go up until you hit something. Right there, I hit something, and that's my trend line. Wow, not too bad at all. So now I'm going to make things a little difficult for you, and we're going to extend this trend line using that same point of reference, which is right here. But I want you to notice my trend line got broken here. You're like, Randy, right there, evidence trend lines don't work. You're an idiot. Well, I'm going to say, no, I'm not an idiot. And I'm going to say, one thing you need to do when drawing trend lines or using almost any other form of technical analysis is, I want you to keep one thing in mind before I tell you what I'm going to tell you. Nothing on a chart is a wall. The only thing that is a wall technically is a horizontal level. That is considered a wall because it has a price component to it. It's very well known that this is at $44,238.84. Okay, that is the level of this wall. Once that wall gets broken down, there's no putting it back together. Okay, with an angled trend line, you're dealing with more uncertainty. Not a lot of people really respect these, but they work really well. So here's my rule with angled trend lines, okay? So we're right here. We drew our trend line, and then I'm going to hit my right mouse button to get the next day on the chart. Next day, respected trend line. Next day, we're coming down to the trend line, but I want you to notice something is the volume. So the volume is really low. Look at how low this day's volume is, and we're getting close to this trend line. That tells us that even though we did move down a little bit, there's really not a lot of pressure pushing us lower. You move lower again, and boom, there we break the trend line. Is all lost? No, it's not. While we did get to average volume, again, it's a pretty low volume candle. Average volume's been declining, okay? This can scare you a little bit, and that's okay, but what you're going to notice is that there's just not a lot of selling pressure here. The next day, you're under it. So now what you do, so here's a good narrative you can do. If you get a big break like this, or what you think is a big break, pay attention to the horizontal underneath that low. Okay? This is what you can do. Because at this point, the next day you break back through the trend line, a bigger candle on bigger volume, and then you're off to the races. So this trend line, there's a minor shakeout move here on the trend line, but you're going to find shakeouts with any circumstance. Anything that you try to trade, you're going to find a shakeout there, and boom, and then we go. And notice, we do get supported again by the diagonal, and then we go straight through the horizontal. Now, one more note, and I'll let you guys go. This horizontal we drew, while definitely valid up here at that 4,238 level, now that we're on this side of the chart, there's something else you can do. Okay, so this is our overall level, in my opinion. Some people are going to want to draw it here. That's fine. Some people are going to want to draw it elsewhere. But what I like to do after this chart has matured a little bit and you get a lot of data, and this is a couple months old, try to find the highest close, which is right here. Okay. So this is the highest close. Now, this was a straight reversal. It just came up, topped, came up again, went straight back down. So pretty much a straight reversal. And sometimes, anyway, just use this close, just find the highest close, draw a horizontal. If you want a lower entry point, that can be your lower entry point. Okay, and it does a good job here getting you in just a little bit before the breakout. Okay, so keep this in perspective, because in this situation, the market, I remember this, just put it that way. Market dropped substantially, found a bunch of support, rallied substantially, and then proceeded to go sideways for about 3+ months. Okay, that is a good amount of time period for all the sellers to sell that wanted to, and for the buyers to start accumulating. So once you have this type of a structure in place, okay, you're not always going to get it this clean, but you're going to notice it on smaller time frames, a couple of weeks, something like that. You can notice good price action like this, horizontals, diagonals, all supporting each other in a singular direction. And then you get a good breakout. That's when you get the good breakout moves that everyone tries to learn. And so you can use these lessons. Now, if they don't follow this, if you get chopped into highs up here, like say this wasn't respected, it chopped in here and then came back down, and this chopped up and came back down, you're adjusting your horizontals appropriately. But if it respects these first horizontals after this rally. That is a very, very good setup. Okay, so what you're going to notice as you get, go through your trading career, if the setup is stable and fits the entire profile, it usually works out really well. Unfortunately, now we're not getting a lot of that. Okay, and so that's why we're in this choppy area, because nothing's fitting the profile. So in this situation, draw your horizontals, draw your diagonals, and I'll dive deeper into this tomorrow as well. Let me know if you have any questions about trend lines, and I'll address them in tomorrow's video. All right, guys, thanks for joining me on Altcoin Buzz Trading. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.